Securing your domain's email, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Email is completely insecure by default. The security afforded to email today is provided by a complex system of optional add-ons, but most of these add-ons aren't in place automatically. It's up to you and your company's IT team to make sure that your email is secure. So let's look at the problem and the history behind email's insecurity. Email has been around for over 50 years in one form or fashion, but the original email systems were intra-host based. In other words, in old-time sharing mainframe systems, email was utilized only in single hosts. In 1971, Ray Tomlinson extended an existing mail system called SendMessage by adding the ability to send to other hosts on the ARPANET using the @ symbol to identify these hosts. With the rise of spam in the late 90s and early 2000s, email standards continued to evolve as the need to protect hosts from fraud, spoofing, and to provide reporting on compliance became increasingly necessary. The Internet Engineering Task Force, or IETF, which manages most of the relevant standards for Internet technologies, began developing standards related to email security and domain protection. As a technology, email evolved from networks that were primarily research-based, filled with academic faculty and students, and usually contained very few, if any, individuals that were interested in grief or fraud. As with many services on the Internet, security and authentication was created as an afterthought, as the original Internet could hardly conceive of a day when people would make millions scamming and spamming innocents with phishing emails and messages for natural mail enhancement. A few different technologies are utilized to send and receive email via the Internet. A couple of terms you might have heard are POP, or Post Office Protocol, or IMAP, Internet Message Access Protocol. These are competing technologies used for recipients to view their messages. These are servers where the messages are delivered to and allow users to view their inboxes and other folders. However, these standards are not our focus today. Instead, we must focus on the servers that send email. Email is sent through servers utilizing a protocol called SMTP, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. The protocol was introduced in 1981 and became an IETF standard in '82, and it has evolved from there to the version most modern servers use, Extended SMTP, or ESMTP, in 1995. The first set of problems that existed, it was what is known as open relays. Open relays are SMTP servers that lack authentication and allow anyone to send messages, as in this example. This has been the source of spam primarily throughout the early 2000s. One of the easiest and first examples of email security is to protect your server by turning on authentication. Thankfully, this is no longer a major concern. Most SMTP servers have authentication on by default and do not allow unauthenticated connections. This authentication is usually associated with a mailbox user as well. With the problem of open relays addressed, however, new issues arise. The problem is that it's trivial for someone to set up or use an untrusted SMTP server to send on behalf of a domain they don't control. Setting up an SMTP server is very easy. The email from address is a lot like phone numbers. If you control your own system, you can use that system to spoof whatever number you want and make a call or an email to appear to come from someone that didn't originate it. As an email system administrator, 3 standards have evolved to address spoofing and email fraud. Each of the standards we are discussing here today are dependent on 2 factors: making sure that your SMTP servers are configured to use the standard, and setting up your own domain's DNS entries to adhere to the standard. All 3 of these technologies rely on the domain name service to work. Public records are entered in DNS for each of these records, and that allows other servers receiving email from your domain to verify them using these technologies. These 3 Internet standards exist and work together to help protect your domain from receiving spam and scam email, as well as helping prevent your own domain from being spoofed by others, which can harm your reputation. Domain Keys Identified Mail. DKIM was originally proposed as separate and competing standards by both Cisco and Yahoo in 2004. The standards were merged, and DKIM was fully accepted as an Internet standard in 2011. DKIM utilizes public key cryptography and message hashing to authenticate and identify message sources. While it is an unlikely method for attackers to use, DKIM verifies the integrity of messages. In other words, a message that can be verified through DKIM means the message has not changed as it passed through the internet. This shows the two entries critical to DKIM. The top is the entry in the public DNS server. Using a text record, the domain owner includes the encryption algorithm, the public key, and a selector name. In the message header, the message is signed. The selector tells the receiving server which selector to view in DNS and provides the message hash in ciphertext to be unencrypted in the public key. DKIM uses a public-private cryptographic key pair to sign the message. The message is hashed and the hash is encrypted with a private key, meaning anyone, in this case destination.org, can decrypt it to verify that example.org encrypted the hash. When destination.org receives the message, it calculates the same hash and then matches it against the decrypted hash. If they don't match, then the message was modified, and the server can throw it out. If you'll remember back to your studies on public key cryptography, using a private key to encrypt something means anyone can unencrypt it, which means you can't guarantee confidentiality, but you can guarantee integrity and non-repudiation. Because the only server with a private key should be, in this case, example.org, this proves that only example.org was able to send the message. Non-repudiation also means that example.org can't say it didn't send the message unless the server was hacked. Note that DKIM doesn't guarantee that a user sent the message, only that it was signed by the SMTP server itself. But if there's any question as to whether or not example.org sent the message, DKIM proves it. Sender Policy Framework. Sender Policy Framework began in 2006 as an experimental standard and was accepted as a proposed Internet standard in 2014. Don't let this term confuse you, however, the standard is nearly required these days by all major providers, and you should spend the 5 to 10 minutes setting it up. Scammers can spoof messages by making that message they're sending appear to come from any domain. If a server does not have any information on who is allowed to send on behalf of another domain, the server will simply store and forward messages without question, including from someone masquerading as a member of a domain to send a spoof message. This is how someone can fake CEO@example.org and is the primary source of spear phishing fraud scams via email. Note that example.org will never even know that its domain was used as the source of a fraud scheme. In this record, you can see how servers can be instructed on which internet addresses are authorized to send on behalf of a domain. If this domain is example.com, then these IP addresses can send messages for example.com and could represent mail servers, specific relays, or even such items as a scanner or server that sends messages on behalf of that domain. In addition, the inclusion of spf.protection.outlook.com refers to Microsoft's Outlook online service, part of Office 365. In addition, services like SendGrid, MailChimp, Constant Contact, and other bulk emailing systems work using SPF. These are SMTP relays designed to send bulk email, though obviously much more legitimately, in the form of customer newsletters, marketing material, and other legitimate uses. And it's through this SPF record that these services can send on behalf of example.com legitimately. Finally, the last section of the SPF record indicates whether or not anything that doesn't match this list should succeed or fail. If Relay.com is checking SPF records, it will check example.org's DNS records when it receives the message from scammer.net. In this example, example.org has not authorized scammer.net to send on behalf of example.org. So, Relay.com should reject or quarantine the message. In this way, it never gets to destination.org. domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance. DMARC instructs servers on what to do for reporting back to affected domains and promotes alignment with the from address, which any fraudster can modify at a whim. Even if you have DKIM and SPF, it is still trivial for scammers to spoof a domain. Since messages are only checked for DKIM if they have DKIM message headers, messages without it will be delivered as though they are legitimate. Additionally, if an SMTP server isn't configured to check SPF or DKIM, the message will be passed through to other trusting SMTP servers. DMARC attempts to address these problems by instructing servers on how to handle these situations. DMARC is the final linchpin in all of this. Properly configuring your DMARC records allows all SMTP servers to know how to handle them. DKIM ensures the integrity of the message is maintained, while SPF provides a mechanism for verifying who is allowed to send mail on a domain's behalf. This is an example of a DNS entry for DMARC. As always, it starts with the version and then provides a policy, which can be none, reject, or quarantine for both the main domain and any subdomains. Then it includes a percentage of messages, which is often used to slowly increase the quarantining or rejection of messages as a domain owner tests the impact on their users. Finally, these two records are for aggregate, hence the A, and forensics, hence the F, reporting. These addresses can be a local email account, such as postmaster@example.com, but in a later slide, we provide third-party solutions that provide specific email addresses to enter here so that they can receive, process, analyze, and aggregate the reports for you into useful charts and reports. DMARC tells systems what the policy is for SPF or DKIM failures, and provides a reporting endpoint for this information to allow for better protection of one's domain. DMARC also provides a method to align the domain with the from address, meaning it helps prevent spoofing. The reporting allows example.org, which was never involved in the relay chain in this example, to still know how its domain was being used in spoofing. These three records are highly technical, and getting them wrong can cause your domain to be unable to send or receive email. A number of free tools for system administrators exist that will help you check these records and monitor your settings. If you are in charge of email for a domain or have your own domain, you should use all of these tricks to prevent your domain from being used as a source for spoofed spam and to prevent you from receiving as much spam. There are several DMARC monitoring services, some of which are free or have free tiers for low-volume domains. We'll view DMARCian for now as an example of why you should forward your messages to one of these services. Here is a real-life example of DMARCian, showing the domain omag.org. DMARCian is set to receive the forensic and aggregate reports for omag.org. Here you see that it is aware of the SPF record and the DMARC record. DMARCian processes forensic and aggregate reports and provides analysis of the data contained in them, providing useful information back to the postmaster or system administrator on what systems are trying to spoof omag.org and what servers are configured to use which methodologies. Here's an example of a forensic report in a much more friendly display. DMARCian's detail viewer provides helpful graphs of compliance, while providing tools to system administrators, or postmasters, on where spoofing may be coming from. This allows email administrators to tweak and update settings, both to make sure that legitimate sources of email are getting through, as well as illegitimate sources are being blocked. This also allows you to view servers or endpoints that might have been missed when setting up your SPF records, such as these. You can mark legitimate sources for further research, or work with partner organizations that may send on your behalf. This can even allow you to diagnose problems with bulk email platforms. For more information, please visit these references. Thanks for watching, and go secure your email server.